are we up to?
I'm sorry?
Which part are we up to?
We just finished the first verse. Poda besholom nafshi, we talked about the general reality of the mimer, right? Based on the mimer of the Mittler Rebbe, because the mimer was said on Yud Kislev. Good to see you, young man. The Mittler Rebbe was released from interrogation. He wasn't in jail like the Alter Rebbe, but he was interrogated and held in. Again, it wasn't jail, but he was held by the authorities and interrogated. And his day of redemption was Yud Kislev, which is a big Yom Tif in Lubavitch. The Rebbe there were always Farbrengen's Tes, Tes and Yud, depending on how the calendar worked. What was the best day to make the Farbrengen? Tes Kislev is the Mittler Rebbe's birthday and his Yortzeit, and Yud, a year or two before his passing, Yud Kislev was his day of redemption. And as he was being redeemed, he said the pasuk Poda besholom nafshi mikravli ki b'rabim hayu imadi. And we learned yesterday that there are three different levels of shalom. There's the level of shalom that existed in the time of Shlomo HaMelech. There's the level of shalom that exists in the time of Yemei Mashiach. And there's level of shalom that exists in the second kufa of Yemei Mashiach, in the second period of Yemei Mashiach, which is Eilam HaTchiyah. The first period of Yemei Mashiach is Ein Bein Eilam Hazeh Yemei Mashiach Ela Shibud Malchus Bilvad. We will be in charge of our own affairs. There will be major differences, but there's going to be a Beis HaMikdash, and we will be in charge of our own affairs. We'll have a Melech in Eretz Yisrael, and the nations of the world are not going to hate us, etc. Itself, we say it's not a time of great miracles. That itself is one of the greatest miracles imaginable, that the nations of the world won't hate us. But okay, so they seem to get a kick out of it. But in the Yemei Mashiach, that won't be the case. And then there's the Olam HaTechiyah, the second Kufa in Yemei Mashiach, which can be up to 40 years later, and that's Olam HaTechiyah, when all the neshamas that are now in Gan Eden come back down into Olam Hazeh and are clothed in bodies and live forever, right? And that's certainly a miraculous time. So there's three different levels of shalom, right? And one thing the Rebbe mentioned to us yesterday was that the fact that the Mittler Rebbe mentions the reality of the animals, the gar zevim keves, so that's shaykh to the second kufa. When are the wolf and the lamb going to rest together, going to lay together? In Gashmias, that's the second kufa of Yemei Mashiach. Wolves will still eat lambs for breakfast or lunch in the first kufa of Yemei Mashiach, because that's just what they eat. And the second kufa, so wool, what does the pasuk in Yeshayahu say? That an ari, like a bucker, will eat straw, that the lion will become a herbivore, right? Okay, so that's the second kufa. The first kufa of Yemei Mashiach, if you happen to be walking along somewhere and you see a lion, and next to her are cubs, and she looks hungry, you should not necessarily think that you're, safe, right? She might decide that, even though they don't like us, they're not interested in eating us. They'd rather eat an antelope, but if they're hungry, they're hungry. Okay, be your Indian. Space. And now the Rebbe is going to explain this. In this, the Rebbe is going to explain the difference between Tefillah and Torah. Ubir Indian. Dagam she Indian apadia b'sholom. Even though this whole idea of this redemption in peace, peaceful redemption. Now, peaceful redemption seems to indicate that the redemption comes as a result of no war, where the continuation of the pasuk says, "Poda besholom nafshi mikravli," from the battle that was to me. So that's something that we have to understand, because the pasuk seems to contradict itself. As we said yesterday, it doesn't say Poda l'sholom, that I was redeemed into a state of peace. I was redeemed in a peaceful way from the battle. How can you be redeemed in a peaceful way from the battle? If you're in a battle, it's not peaceful. Okay, that's the basic problem in Pshat in the pasuk. But now the Rebbe is going to talk about two different ways of pedia, of redemption. Even though the notion of this peaceful redemption was in the time of Shlomo Melech, who's called Shlomo Melech, Kadosh Baruch Hu tells David HaMelech to call him Shlomo because there will be peace in his days. Mikol Mokim Tachlis HaShlema Shebezeh, the ultimate expression of this Sholem will be Yiyah B'Yemei Mashiach, Ubehem Gufa, and in the days of Mashiach themselves, Betkufa base, in the second period of Yemei Mashiach. Yuvan Mizeh, it's understood from this Shemavar Maimer that again the Mittler Rebbe explains in the Maimer, and you've learned enough Maimarim of the Rebbe to realize that the Rebbe's Maimarim are almost always based on Maimarim of previous Rebbeim. Degam al Yedei Eisek Torah Achshav, that also through involvement in learning Torah now Nasa Pedia B'Sholom, we bring about a peaceful redemption. In other words, what? Ki habirur, the rectification of physical reality, shal yedei Eisek Torah, that comes as a result of you and I learning Torah, hu bebechinas bittul hara be'etzem, is in a quality of, and the Rebbe is quoting the Mittler Rebbe, bittul hara, the nullification of the negative reality, be'etzem, in essence. There's different ways you can deal with ra. You can control it, right? It's there, but it's controlled, or it can be completely and totally nullified. And obviously there's certain places in between those two, right? There's the level, obviously, in which it's not controlled. We're not talking about that, right? The control of it, but it's there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's still as strong as it ever was, but it's under control, right? As opposed to complete nullification of the Ra. So the bittul of Ra that happens as a result of learning Torah is called by the Mittler Rebbe bittul hara be'etzem, and we're going to see that happens in an oifen of sholem. What's birur? Birur is how you and I affect the world positively. Our job is to elevate, illuminate, and rectify the world. That's why we're here. The Eibishter created a world, we talked about this in Maim Rabbim, the Eibishter created a world that was perfectly imperfect. The first world the Eibishter created was perfect. It lasted a few hours on the sixth day, and then on the sixth day of creation, that world was brought down to a state of imperfection. And that's the world the Eibishter wanted, because that happened on the sixth day of creation. Right? We've talked about this before, but it's just such an important idea to understand in terms of understanding Chet Eitzadas. How it happened, we don't know. That's not our issue, right? What happened? What happened was the world left its state of perfection and went into a state of what you and I would call imperfection. And then the history of the world after that, because history hasn't started yet, there's no history until the end of the creation. That act is part of the creation, not part of history. So what's the history of the world all about? The rectification of the world. Beseder, the first 20 generations are really quite astounded. They're really quite crazy what goes on. Right, 10 generations until Noach, and then that world again is wiped out. Not exactly, right? But it's put in the mikveh, is how Chassidus understands it. It had to go to the mikveh, and what came out as a result of that part of the process of ultimately getting to the 20th generation of the world, which is Avram Avinu, which ultimately gets us to the 26th generation of the world, which is Moshe Rabbeinu and Matan Torah. But the first 10 generations were generations of tremendous chaos. We talk about the first 2,000 years of the world's history being Alpayim, Chazal say, Alpayim shel Toyu, 2,000 years of chaos. What starts with Avram Avinu? Alpayim shel Torah, 2,000 years of Torah. Because the whole notion of Torah entering the world happens when Avram Avinu was born. What year was Avram Avinu born in? It's easy to remember. 1948, right? 1948 in the world's in the world's years. So that begins the 2,000 years of Torah, which culminates with the destruction of the Second Temple, which begins the 2,000 years of Mashiach. That's how Chazal divide up the 6,000 years of the world's history before Shabbos, being Mashiach. Shabbos can be brought in early, don't worry. So the world what did the Mabul bring into the world? So it's very interesting how Chassidus explains it with the image of water making something pliable. The notion of tshuva entered the world after the Mabul, meaning that you could actually right the wrong. Right? The world that before was, so to speak, stiff and unflexible. Right? Tshuva was very difficult. But okay, Seder, that's not our topic. It's just interesting information that you should know. So if we're already there, we'll say it. Okay. The world requires what's called a birur, rectifying the world, elevating the positive and negating the negative in reality until ultimately the world becomes a place that is fit for the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that's called Mashiach. And that process, interesting enough, the Rebbe told us in Tafshin Nun Beis, in Tafshin Nun Aleph in the summer, that the process of birur, of rectification of the world has been done. It's over, we finished, meaning the world is ready for Mashiach. All that had to be done has been done. And now the Aveda is Kabbalah's B'nai Mashiach Tzidkenu, to accept Mashiach, receive Mashiach. That's our Aveda. The Rebbe says in Parshas Noach, Tafshin Nun Beis, something fascinating, because everybody was wondering after the Rebbe said that Avedas of Birurim is over, we finished, we did it. So everybody was quite confused, because every single person realized that in their life there was still a need for a lot of Birurim. Right? I'm part of the world. Right?
Now is not the time for the Avodat Nisroinus?
No. Birurim's over. Right? Birurim are over. That's what the Rebbe said. Right? So then why do I need birur in my own life? I mean, there's all sorts of things in my life that have to be rectified and illuminated that aren't yet there. So that was a question everybody started walking around with for a while. And Parshas Noach, Tafshin Nun Beis, last week, Parshas Tafshin Nun Beis. So what's that? 34 years ago. So Rebbe explains it. Amazing sikha. Rebbe says, the Avedas Birurim of the world has been done. The world is ready for Mashiach. The only thing necessary to bring Mashiach is for the world to accept Mashiach. And what about the Birurim of every individual? That's a very, very important thing that every person does, and that has to do with his personal relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu. But his success or chas v'sholom failure in that particular enterprise does not affect in any way, shape, or form the coming of Mashiach. Which is really an astounding thing. That's what the Rebbe says. Absolutely astounding. Okay, so you can chew on that for a while. Look at the Sikha. It's amazing. Okay, but what's Birurim? The Rebbe's talking here now about Birurim. We're going to learn about two different types of Birurim. There's a birur that's ba'ofen shel milchama, and there's a birur that's ba'ofen shel sholem. You and I can elevate and rectify the world in a peaceful, calm way, and you and I can elevate and rectify the world in an oifen, in a way in which we are confronting it and battling with it. Right. Now, just an example of birur, which is this piece of paper here. Okay, this one is just the title page. Sorry, she wasn't around to make your little booklets. Okay, this piece of paper is a picture of this book. Well, not this one, another book. The same book. It's a picture of this book. This book is a holy book. It's a Sefer Kodesh. It's printed, it's holy, and it can't be thrown in the garbage. What doesn't exist in this book? There's no name of God written in this book. Yud Kei Vav Kei isn't written in this book. Right? Even the word Elokim is probably written with a kuf, though I'm not sure. It might be written with a hey. Right? But Yud Kei Vav Kei is not written in this book. Right? Okay. It's not a siddur. It doesn't have God's name. But it's a holy book, and it can't be thrown out. This is a picture of that book. So this has no kedusha, this piece of paper. So if you, when you're copying, make a mistake, and sometimes it happens that this page will be printed and this page will just be a bunch of weird black lines, like something happened in the copying. Maybe you don't do so much copying, or teachers do a lot of copying. Right? So something can happen. Okay. So theoretically, what can you do with this? You put it in the garbage. You don't have to put it in Geniza. Generally, we do anyway because it feels funny throwing a minor. But in La Halacha, it can be put in the garbage. Why? There's no kedusha. There's no holiness. It's just a picture of a book. It itself has holy. If God's name's on it, it's holy. You can't throw it in the garbage. But if there's no God, God's name isn't on it. Okay. Now, what about the ones you have? This is over here. What about the ones you have? The ones you have can't be thrown in the garbage. They have to be put in Geniza. Why? Because you learned out of it. By virtue of learning out of it, what have you done? You've elevated this piece of paper to a state of Kedusha, you've changed its metaphysical reality and it can no longer be thrown in the garbage. Whoa. It's pretty astounding. Now, I didn't do it with this one. Right? I could have read the first line. Right? So you can actually change the metaphysical reality of a piece of paper. Right? That's what we do all the time. Right? The lulav that sat in the box and no one ever bought. Nice green stick. The lulav that you shook for 6 days with a very serious look on your face. Right? You might have even given it to other people to shake. Right? I mean, we live across the street from gun soccer. The notion of mitsoyim is so easy here; it's beyond belief. Okay, so if you did mitsoyim with your lulav, so it was shaken, who knows how many times? Say them. So what do we do with that lulav? Theoretically, interesting enough, you can actually just throw it away, but no one does. What do we do? What's the meaning of Yisrael to do with that lulav? What do we do with it? We burn it with our chametz, right? We involve it in another mitzvah. We put it aside, and when we burn our chametz, we put it on the fire, and it burns out. It helps us burn our chametz, right? And Lubavitcher's chametz burning always smells a lot nicer than everybody else's because we have a lot of hadassim, and hadassim make a nice smell when they burn. It's a very nice smell. So that's rectification. That's what beer is about. Taking a physical object and elevating it to a state of Kedusha. Taking yourself, elevating yourself to a state of Kedusha. Taking time and using that time for holy pursuit. So then you've elevated that piece of time. We can elevate space and time, which is what God created. Okay, that's called beer. What's the Rebbe is going to explain this at length. What's the way in which we do that besholom, learning Torah? The Rebbe is going to explain. Ukemavur bekama drushim, as is explained a number of drushim, and that's the Rebbeim's way of describing what you and I call my myrim. A hefresh bein Torah le tefillah. The difference between Torah and tefillah, which, you guys happen to have the incredible schut, and at this particular point in your life, that those are basically the only two things you're doing. Right? You're either sitting learning Torah or you're davening, right? Not going to work. Most of you are unemployed, which is fine. It's good. Good time to be unemployed, right? You don't always have to be employed. Some people have this bizarre. It's a fetish, that they're oh my gosh, I'm 19. I have to be employed already. No, you don't. You don't have to be employed. You don't have any responsibility. Take advantage of this part of your life where you don't have to be employed. You do not have to get involved in the gross national product yet. You're not supporting anybody. Sit and learn Torah so that when you grow up, you'll be a normal, healthy, productive human being. Right? Okay. So, grow up, meaning you know what I mean. Right? Okay. So, you guys get to sit and learn Torah and daven all day, which is pretty good. Shabir b'tefillah. So this rectification that's brought about through tefillah, and tefillah is very interesting, right? What do we talk about in most? We talk about there's three parts to the davening that we do. When we say tefillah, we're usually talking about Shemona Esrei, right? That's the ikar of tefillah. So in Shemona Esrei, there's three basic parts in the Shemona Esrei that we say 3 times a day. And what are those 3 basic parts? First 3 brachas. What's that about? There's no class in tefillah in this place. Yeah. Okay. No, there must be.
Thanking.
What?
Thanking.
I didn't hear.
Thanking.
No. That's the last 3. It starts with Meidim. Praising. We're praising HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the first 3 brachas. That's why in the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we talked about HaKadosh Baruch Hu being the one who brings the wind and brings the rain. Right? Okay, but what had we not yet done until yesterday? Ask for rain. We didn't ask for rain. Why didn't we ask for rain? We didn't ask for rain until yesterday here in Eretz Yisrael, so that the last person who came to Yerushalayim from as far away as the eastern border of Eretz Yisrael, which is Nahar Pras, the Euphrates River, that last Jew, Achron should be Yisrael Yigil Nahar Pras. The last one of the Jews will reach Nahar Pras. It took 2 weeks, evidently, to get to the farthest place, so all of the Jews would wait until the last Jew was home. An expression of Avos Yisrael, and that's why our Rebbe made Zion Marcheshvan a Chag. Rebbe's verbringen Zion Marcheshvan. Made it a Yom Tov. Rebbe made a lot of Yom Tovim, right? But this Zion Marcheshvan a Yom Tov, Pashat a Yom Tov in Lubavitch, and it became the official end of Tishrei. Tishrei didn't end until Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Maybe we talked about it yesterday. I don't know, but it was one of the expressions that is very, very, very interesting, just very fascinating. That in the front of the shul, you've all seen pictures of 770, but you might have seen some old videos. And in the old videos, you'll notice that the Rebbe's shtender is on the ground. It's on the same level of everybody else. The 770 that you might have seen, or that you've seen in most videos, is the Rebbe's shtender is on an elevated platform in the right corner of front right corner of 770, on the Bazal downstairs. So that wasn't always the case. And when they wanted to do that, so the Rebbe said no. The Rebbe didn't want that to happen. The Rebbe talked about it also in terms of halacha, that if you make a different domain, then I'm going to be davening alone. Also, it was a very evidently a fascinating discussions went around that whole thing. So the Rebbe gave certain conditions as to when to get that. So when did the Rebbe first agree that there should be a platform? There could be for Tishrei. So all the visitors come for Tishrei, and Tishrei is very packed, so the Rebbe would be in a place where everybody could see the Rebbe. Okay, that makes sense, because normally 770 wasn't so packed, right? This is the early days, it wasn't so packed like it is now. And so anybody who walked into 770, even though the Rebbe was on the same level as us, they could see where the Rebbe was davening in the front. Couldn't see in Tishrei. Okay, so the Rebbe agreed that for Tishrei, there could be a platform. When did the platform come down? Right after Simchas Torah. Mamish, immediately. The Rebbe wanted the platform down. Okay. Tafshin Mem Aleph, the Rebbe started talking about Zayin Mar Cheshvan. I'm not sure whether it was Mem Aleph or Mem Beis the first for bringing, but already Mem Aleph, the Rebbe was talking about Zayin Mar Cheshvan. He was making a shturim about Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Yesterday. And from that year on, the platform stayed until they just left it up. I know that was somewhere in the middle, late Mems. But from that year on, the platform stayed up until Zayin Mar Cheshvan. That's when they would take it down. The official end of Tishrei in Lubavitch was Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Right? And still the Rebbe asked guests who had come for Tishrei that if they could stay, they should stay till Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Right? Now, who were the only people who could stay? Bachrim, they're unemployed. Right? So they could stay. Everybody else had to go back to their job. How long could they? But the Bachrim stayed. Right? Today, Israeli Bachrim go to the Rebbe for a year to learn. It's called Kvutza. After 3 years of Yeshiva Ktana, which is called Mesivta in the rest of the world, and 3 years of Yeshiva G'dayla, which is called Zal in most places in the rest of the world. But here in Israel, it's Yeshiva Ktana, Yeshiva G'dayla. So after 3 years of Yeshiva G'dayla, some yeshivas here have a fourth year that they do shlichus somewhere here. Then they go spend a year, shlichus, a learning shlichus. Then they go spend a year in 770. Learning in 770. It's called Kvutza. And if you've ever been to 770, you'll notice that most of the Bachrim downstairs are Israelis. Who are they? Well, they're Israelis who are spending a year in 770 learning. So, when do they go? They go Chayel. When do they leave? Yesterday. The end of their year is yesterday. Zayin Mar Cheshvan. Since Tishrei by the Rebbe lasts until yesterday. Right? So the last Jew made it home. And so when do the Jews go home? Because now it doesn't take 2 weeks, it takes a couple of hours, get on a plane. So they leave on Zayin Mar Cheshvan, which means that in the dormitories for the Israeli Bachrim, so there are 2 years of Bachrim in the dorm together for about a month and a half. It's a little crowded. And the new guys are very happy today. Today is a great day for the guys who came this year, because finally they can unpack their stuff. They have a closet. They've been living out of their bag. They were sleeping on the floor on a mattress. Who knows what they've been doing it's been a Tishrei experience. Now they moved. They've been in the dorm, but there was no room. Now half the guys moved out. That's 500 guys moved out. So now they have their place in the dorm. It's a very happy day for the Bachrim. So that's Zayin. That's Zayin Mar Cheshvan yesterday. You guys are just in Tishrei all day long because you sit and learn Torah and Bring and daven all day. It's just living Tishrei. So what's the difference between Torah and Tefillah? So the first 3 brachas, praise. Right? Mm-hmm. So we praise the Kadosh Baruch Hu that he's the one who sends rain, but we don't ask him for it. Not until yesterday. Yesterday we started asking for rain. in Baruch Aleinu, what's called Birchas Hashonim. Right? And then after those 13 intermediary brachas, because that which you and I call Shemona Esrei, which means 18, obviously, of course, isn't 18 because we're Jews and it couldn't possibly really be 18 if we call it 18. Why would we do something as silly as that? So, of course, there's 19 brachas in what's called Shemona Esrei. The 19th bracha was added later, the time of some tumult here in Eretz Yisrael, where there was a Jew starting a new religion. So that's when that bracha showed up. The last three are thanks. Okay. So that's a battle. The Rebbe will discuss. Shabiru de tfilu b'derech milchoma. What do Chazal say about davening? Zoyar, Shas Sloisa, the hour, the time of davening, Shas Krova, is a time of battle. V'bir de taru b'derech menucha. And the beer of Torah is calm. Now, Rebbe's going to explain that, so I don't have to. So let's go. The difference between the rectification on the level of milchama and the rectification of reality that happens by in a calm, peaceful way, in the biddur that is involving some sort of battle, some sort of war, Sarech HaMevader, the one who's bringing about this rectification, Lislavesh Belevushe HaMizbarer. He has to be clothed, meaning directly involved, in the garments, in the reality of HaMizbarer, the one who is being, or the reality that is being elevated. Okay, we'll talk about that. Mashein Kain, that's not the case, Habiru Shebederech Menucha. It's not the case of the beer of Derech Menucha. HaMevarer Nishar Bimkeme, the one who's bringing about the beer, stays in his place, remains in his place. He doesn't have to go confront directly the reality he wants to elevate. Val Yedei Hagilui Ur, and by virtue of the revelation of light, the HaMevarer, that this person is emanating through his positive action, Shemeir ala mizbara, and that light illuminates that state of reality that he wants to elevate. Hu mizbara mamela. It's elevated consequently. Mamela, meaning without any particular effort. Okay. What does that mean? So Rabbi just said something very, very fascinating. First talk about Talmud Torah. That's easier to understand. I think easier to understand. It'll be easier to understand Tefillah also when we understand the Talmud Torah. Even though the Rebbe did first the Milchama, then the Sholem. When you're sitting and learning Torah, you're sitting in your chair in Zal or in a class somewhere in the building, or I saw Rabbi Chazan's class walk back from gun soccer the other day. They had their Mishnah class in gun soccer, right? Oh, Rabbi, can we learn in the park? You know, so it's just the last few days of nice weather, I get it, sooner or later, the Yerushalayim winter is going to rear its head and your guys are going to be cold and wet around. I assume in this building it's going to be nice and warm, but Yerushalayim winter can be, it's cold. It's cold. It's not, it's not the North America cold, but it's cold. So in the meantime, you're not going to go sit in the park in the middle of December and learn. It'll be cold. Even on a sunny day, it'll be a little chilly. So when we sit and learn Torah, what are we doing? We're doing an amazing thing. You're sitting and learning about locking up the gate in front of a bunch of cattle so that they won't walk out and step all over someone else's broccoli sprouts, right? That's what we're doing, right? That is what we're learning about. Okay, fine. Right now, we're learning about how to evaluate the damage that the cow did. Okay, fine. But most of the time, we've been talking about how to avoid the damage. Okay, so where are we sitting? In a room with air conditioning. Might have a cup of coffee next to us. Might have a cup of tea. might have gotten some water, might have bought some taivas from the taiva machine downstairs, and we're sitting and we're learning. Are we encountering the cow? No. Are we encountering the gate? No. Are we encountering the listim mezuyin who are coming to steal my cow and break down the gate? No. Is our listim mezuyin a gana for a gazlan? I don't know. And we'll sit and we'll discuss it. And what are we doing when we're discussing it? We're elevating the whole reality of listim mezuyin, because now listim mezuyin is part of Torah and it's part of godliness and it's holy. Am I encountering the listim mezuyin? Do my clothes smell like a cow after I finish learning a sugya in Baba Kama about locking the gate in front of the cow? It's really the sheep, right? But it happens to be very, very fascinating, the whole idea that we're talking about sheep, because in Eretz Yisrael it was usher to keep sheep and goats because they eat other people's stuff. You graze them out. So in Eretz Yisrael, you're not allowed to be megadol, what's called a behemadaka. We needed them for korbanos. We also eat lamb chops. So the butcher is allowed to have a couple of rams, enough that you could shecht in the immediate future. Right? The Beis Hamikdash obviously has a lot. But the idea of being megadol, we just learned it in the Rambam right now. The being megadol behemadaka in Eretz Yisrael, we're not. No, cows, yes. Behemadaka, no. Right? Okay. Also, dogs are also, unless you live on a border or you need the dog for some protection. But a dog, b'chlal, having a dog around is. But the dog that you have has to be tied up. Right? Also, interesting halachas about animals that might damage. Right? Okay. So I'm just throwing this out for you guys who are learning the sixth parak. It's just so interesting that the first Mishnah, Kranists, Tsoin B'dir, we know we're talking about a Behemoth, we're talking about Tsoin. That's very rare to have sheep in your pen in Eretz Yisrael. The Mishnah is written in Eretz Yisrael, right? And Bavel also is Mekabel the same minhag as Eretz Yisrael relative to Behemoth because of the same reasons. Now, goats are much more damaging than sheep, that's for sure. But anyway. But when we're talking about that sheep in the beginning of the sixth parak, or we're talking about a cow who's such a crazy cow that she slips on her own urine and falls into someone's yard and smashes a few plants, right? Our Rav Kahana's cow, right? Okay. Do you start smelling like a cow? Did the cow just roll on you and squish you? You're miles away from any cow. You're talking about a cow in the comfort of your own zal, living room, base medrash, wherever you happen to be, shul, wherever you happen to be. You're learning about the cow. While you're learning about the cow, you're elevating that cow to a state of godliness because it's not part of Torah. That's birur b'chinas manucha. Learning Torah allows us to elevate the world calmly because we're not mislavish b'levushe hamizbarer. We don't have to directly confront that which we're elevating. All we do is talk about it in the context of Torah, and mamela we elevate it because of the light of Torah that we shine on that thing. That's what the Rebbe just said, which is a fascinating thing, an amazing thing. So we elevate reality by learning the Torah about it. What about davening? So davening is, I think most people find it the hardest thing that we do. Right? I mean, there's certain taivas that everybody has that they might have a hard time, dealing with. Okay, say that. But the day in, day out avodah that we do that we probably think we do worse is davening. You're learning. I mean, I'm sitting and learning. I'm learning. I'm understanding it more. I'm understanding it less. But it's not like I read 3 words and then stop thinking about what I'm reading. It was bizarre. Right? Like, what Gemara? I don't know. Right? Which bracha are you in Shemona Esrei? Wait a minute. Give me a second. Well, wait. I just said. So I just finished. Right? Okay. Why? Well, what are you trying to be mevader? So on one hand, you're being mevader, the physical reality that you are talking about and that you are asking God for, right? And so you're elevating that because it's part of your davening, and you realize that its source is in the Eibishter. right? That it's coming from him. Everything you have in Olam Hazeh comes from him, and so you're asking him for all those things that you need. You're asking him for the intelligence to be the type of person who knows that he has to ask God for their things, right? That's the first thing we ask for is das, the appreciation of the fact what's going on. Because if I don't have that, then I won't say any of the rest of the stuff because I'll think it's all up to me, and I'll just be, grinding up time down here trying to figure out how to make a living. Okay. So the first thing we ask is to have a little appreciation of some sophistication in our understanding of reality. Okay. And then we ask for him to help us in our avodah. And we ask him that we should be healthy. And we ask him that we should have a parnasa. And we ask him over and over and over and over and over again to bring Mashiach. Right? In all sorts of different ways. Okay. So we're dealing with physical reality there. We're also dealing with spiritual realities, but we're dealing with physical realities. But how are we dealing with it? What are we ultimately elevating through the act of tefillah? The word tefillah means to join. What are we joining? What to what? Oh, we're trying to join ourselves to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. B'diuk. And which part of us particularly? Well, I wouldn't say Yetzer Hara, because that word isn't used very much in Chassidus. There's another word, Nefesh Bahamis. Yeah. Nefesh Bahamis is conscious you. Right? We've talked about this before. It's very important to know. Nefesh Bahamis is not bad, terrible, horrible. It can be the source of bad, terrible, horrible stuff. But the Nefesh Bahamis is simply that experience of your own existence that God gave you, which is really quite a gift and quite an amazing experience. Existing is pretty cool. Okay. Now, you and I are aware of our own existence as a separate being from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, realizing perhaps within the context of that human consciousness that I'm not really separate. I just experience separateness. Okay, that's the first step, right? And that's pretty good. So our Nefesh Bahamis would say that. That's why we're sitting here today, right? Because we realize, in essence, I'm really connected. I'm trying to figure out how to get that to be part of my conscious reality. So who is my conscious reality? Who's that person I refer to as I? Nefesh Bahamis. Right? That's the I, which in the language that we're speaking is capitalized wherever it shows up in a sentence. I is always capitalized. You is not always capitalized. Because you are not as important as I. Right? What can you do? Okay, the culture that comes out of that language is pretty consistent with the language itself. Right? iPhone, iPad, iPod, and then you see the father, I paid. But what is people made a joke of it. I don't think it's around anymore, but they came out with something called Wii. The Wii was something. It didn't last, right? I've never seen an ad for it. Right?
Similar things nowadays, but yeah.
Okay, but they said iPhone made something called a Wii. How did they spell it? 2 eyes. They just couldn't get away from that eye. It was stuck in the eye. Okay, but human consciousness, that experience of I, is a gift that the Eibishter gives you and I. It's a beautiful thing. He gives to you and me. He gives you and me, not gives to you and I, you and me. Sorry for the grammatical mistake. Okay? So, davening, without any props, there's no lulav there. Okay, there's one prop that us men have, at least for chakras. We'll put on tefillin, which will, help us sort of focus. If you're married, you get to wrap yourself in a talis, which is even better for, some sort of focus. Okay, say that. But Lamaisa, there's basically no props. And what do I have to do? I have to confront my Nefesh Bahamis directly. I have to be mislavish in my Nefesh Bahamis. I have to get my Nefesh Bahamis to say the words Baruch Ato Vaya Elokeinu Velokei Avosenu and mean them. And that is a battle royal. Because what does my Nefesh Bahamis want? Breakfast. Right? The Nefesh Bahamis isn't necessarily interested in telling God that he's the greatest. Now, he might be generally interested. He's not a lowlife. Doesn't have to be a lowlife. No, he doesn't have to be a lowlife. He really doesn't. Right? But to get him to actually want to spend a serious amount of time focusing on praising God and only praising God for the next 45 minutes, 12 minutes at Mincha, 12 minutes at Mariv, to get that Nefesh Bahamis and however long Kriya Shema Shalamita takes, to get that Nefesh Bahamis to do that is a battle royal. And that's what the Rebbe is talking about in terms of tefillah. Why? Because you're mislavish in the mizbarer. You're davening with your Nefesh Bahamis. It's the Nefesh Elokis trying to express itself through the Nefesh Bahamis, which is what life is all about. That's what we're trying to educate our Nefesh Bahamis and elevate and illuminate our Nefesh Bahamis so it will be a proper conduit for the desires of the Nefesh Elokis. Right? So conscious me and essential me will be more in line with each other. A Jew knows nothing about Torah. Not his fault. No one told him. Right? That Jew is generally in a state of turmoil. He's always looking for something. Right? Looking to save the world. So he'll find something else other than Torah to save the world. He's always wants to do something. Right? But he's in a state of angst. What's his angst? Where's his angst coming from? His angst is coming from that his essential connection to God isn't able to be revealed in any way, shape, or form in his everyday conscious life. And he's in this state of some sort of dichotomous existence that's very unsettling. That's reality. Now, we're all in that to a certain degree, even if we know about Torah and Mitzvahs, got lucky enough to find out about Torah and Mitzvahs, or we were told about it when we were young, or whatever it happens to be. So even those people who know about it are still in that same state because they know that there's this essential reality of them. There's one with the Eibusher, like we learned in our previous Maimon, in Maim Rabim. But is my conscious life in line with that essential me? Or is conscious me somehow living in some other planet? Well, okay, sometimes my conscious me is in line with that. Sometimes my conscious me is like stuck in some other planet and actually takes Olam Hazeh very seriously, like, really thinks that Olam Hazeh is here and God wants us to be here. But, when people always say that, I don't know, people, the 18-year-old Lubavitcher girls that I teach always say this. You hear it less from around here because of your background. But Lubavitcher girls always say this. It's very annoying when you have discussions about the world and why we're here and what we're supposed to be doing. Oh, but the Rebbe wants us in the world. That's true. Which world? The one the Goyim made or the one God made? The one God made, not the one the Goyim made. The Rebbe doesn't want us to be part of that world. Right? We have nothing to do with that. Right? Now, we do because we're in it, and so we know it's out there. Right? We pretend we had some sort of lobotomy and we don't see anything else. So of course we know it's out there. But if you haven't heard of Donald Trump, then there's something wrong. Like, that's not normal, right? You can't walk around Olam Hazeh today and never have heard of that guy, okay? You like him, you don't like him. It can't be, well, who? Like someone's going to pretend he's never heard of him? Give me a break, right? It's very hard to pretend you've never heard of that person, right? Okay. But, what am I all about? Hopefully I'm not all about that world. I'm about Jewish world. Right? We have our own culture. A very, very important part of being a religious Jew is being part of Jewish culture as opposed to non-Jewish culture. That doesn't mean that's all there is. Judaism isn't cultural, but a very big part, and a very big part of it is that. And Jewish culture doesn't mean the Yiddish theater. That's Goyish culture in Yiddish. I mean, that used to be Jewish culture, the Yiddish theater. No. So, davening, we have to get our Nefesh Bahamis to actually want to tell God that I love you. Wow, what a battle. It's a battle royal that we try every day. We try everything. We get up earlier in the morning, we go to mikveh. Right? Your mikveh is nice and clean and amazing and incredible. I still see guys taking showers after the mikveh. I don't understand. The mikveh is so nice and clean. It's wonderful. You don't come to the mikveh in my neighborhood, when Gershon took a day off, he's the mikveh man. Right, okay. I remember in the old days, before they had these incredible filters, so mikvehs were not clean. But the Ger Hasidim. In the Lubavitchers, it's a whole new now. All the young Lubavitchers shower after the mikveh. I don't know where they started, but that they all do. But in the old days, Lubavitchers always know, showering after the mikveh. A woman is not allowed to take a shower when she comes out of the mikveh. It's mevatel her tefillah. Right? So, men going to the mikveh, which is just nice and uplifting, but it's not in any way, shape, or form like women going to the mikveh. That's like the real thing. So, generally, relative to most of the hanhagas, relative to a woman, so a man will follow, right? If he's wearing a Band-Aid, he'll take it off. He's not worried about a scab. A woman has to worry about a scab also. We don't worry about that. Okay, but the idea of not showering after the mikveh was just fairly common. But the Ger Hasidim all shower after. That's like the Ger Hasidim they schmooze in the shower, right? Most people schmooze in the mikveh. They schmooze in the shower. That's their schmooze. So. The Ger Rebbe was once asked, I think it was the Sfas Emes, was once asked, what kavanas should someone have when he goes to the mikveh? So he said, in and arois shnel, in and out fast. That should be his kavana. So we used to go to a Ger mikveh that day. It was the mikveh in our neighborhood, closest to us and our shul. We used to go to a Ger mikveh. Their mikvehs are filthy. They don't care. They're showering afterwards. Soap, shampoo, so the mikveh's a little dirty. So they're going to shower afterwards. So the Lubavitchers go to the same mikveh, but we didn't shower afterwards. So I remember my son, he's now 41 years old. He was 8, 9, and he used to come with me Erev Shabbos to the mikveh. And that was our mikveh. So finally they built a mikveh a block away from our house. Nice, new mikveh, beautiful mikveh, 3 pools, really nice. So, and it had filters in those days, right? The filters broken, they never got them again. Right? But, no, they claim they don't have the money, which is ridiculous. They're spending more money filling them up all the time than if they just kept the fill. But anyway, you don't have to hear about that. So I remember the first time I took him to that mikveh Erev Shabbos. He walks down the stairs and he looked up and he said, "Hey, Abba, I can see my feet." You used to put your feet in the Ger mikveh, it would disappear. Those were the old mikvahs. That was nothing. Union Street mikvah in Crown Heights, my goodness gracious, you'd have to bring a knife and cut through cut through whatever, and then go in. You could smell it outside. It was unbelievable, that mikvah. Russians get a kick out of dirty mikvahs. Still, there's 3 pools in the mikvah I go to. There'll be 2 clean ones and 1 that's not clean. There's always these guys who go shower and then go in the dirty one. There's 2 clean ones right here. Why would you go in that one? Something religious. You don't have to suffer for religion or something. I don't know. It's very bizarre. The battle of davening. We'll go to mikveh. We'll learn chassidus. We'll do all sorts of things in order to figure out how to get our head in a place where, and our heart, in a place where it might want to tell the Kadosh Baruch Hu that he's very special. Right? Torah, reality is elevated by virtue of the fact that you've included it in the Torah, and you don't have to go there. As it was in the days of Shlomo. The Shlomo Hayabim came. Shlomo Melech was in his place. Shlomo didn't travel around. And by virtue of the greatness of his name, his name was heard also in far places. Shlomo's greatness was recognized all over. They came to him themselves. Commercial Kosev, we mentioned this yesterday. Malchus Shva, the Queen of Sheba, Shemas, as Shema Shlomo. She heard about Shema, that which is heard about Shema, the fame of Shlomo. V'tava Yerushalmi, and she came to Yerushalayim to be with Shlomo Melech. The kamechein hu achiluk bein abirur de tefillah labirur de Torah. So too, the difference between the rectification that happens through learning through davening and the rectification that happens through learning Torah. Shabirur de tefillah, the birur of tefillah hu ba'ofen shenefesh elokis, who wants to bring about this birur, but what does the nefesh elokis have to do? Mislaveshes benefesh abamis. Is clothed in the nefesh abamis. Now the nefesh elokis is always clothed in the nefesh. What does the word mean? Meaning the nefesh elokis has to confront the nefesh abamis directly and get the nefesh abamis to say the words that the nefesh elokis wants to say. One of the things the Rebbe once said, in order to help with your kavanah and davening, is to imagine that what you're doing, your lips are moving. So who is it whose words are you expressing? The words the Nefesh Elokis wants to say. So just imagine that it's coming straight from your Nefesh Elokis through your lips. Right? The Nefesh Bahamis is the one who makes your lips move. Your lips can't move unless your Nefesh Bahamis says, move lips. Right? Okay. But the words that the Nefesh Elokis wants to say are coming through your lips. It's a very powerful thing to think about when you're davening. Okay. But it's still going to go through the Nefesh Bahamis. Now, you might ask, well, learning also does. Okay, that's true. But you and I will also find that we probably find it easier to concentrate learning than davening. Right? That doesn't mean it's always easy to concentrate on learning, and some people have a concentration problem in learning. Okay, but your average everyday person without any particular problem, still, there'll be times when it's hard to concentrate. But relative to davening, there's no comparison. Right? Basically, paying attention to the Gemara you're learning. Right? You forget in the middle what you were talking about? No. Right? Davening, you might. In Kriya Shema, you might say the middle bracha the middle part of Kriya Shema 3 times if you're not paying attention, because you keep saying Uksaftim and then you start again V'hayim Shemeya. Well, but you just said that. Oh yeah, wait, did I finish the first one or the second one? Lahalacha, it's brought up. What do you do if you're not sure whether you finished the first parak in Kriya Shema or the second? How can I not be sure? I just said it because I wasn't paying any attention to what I was saying. How can I not pay attention to what I was saying? But that happens all the time in davening. Does it happen in conversations with people? Not so much. Right? Wait, well, I mean, you might, if you're in the middle of a thought and you've got to something else, you might go back and forget, wait, what was I talking about? What were we talking? But you know who you're talking to and approximately what you're talking about. Okay. Shmonos is very, very, very difficult. It's a battle. Because you have to get your Nefesh Bahamis to do it. Torah. Why is it not such a battle? The Nefesh Bahamis likes ideas. The Nefesh Bahamis has intellect and finds ideas interesting. Right? So it might learn a book about, popular mechanics, or it'll learn a book about Shor Shenagach Hesapara. Right? But it finds intellectual information interesting. Right? So it's not bothered by the idea of sitting down and learning. I like learning things. Right? Now, a lot of that has to do, that's why it's so important with your own children, to make sure that your children read books, not just look at screens. Right? Because if your children don't read books, they won't want to read books as adults. If they get used to reading books as children, they'll read books as adults. Right? There's a whole generation of Americans who never read a book. Right? What changed American culture? To her great credit? Harry Potter. She got Americans reading. American children read her stuff. And once they started reading her stuff, it was, wow, reading's cool. This is fun, right? This is better than looking at... Anybody who's ever read a book, you don't want to see the movie. What do you want to see a movie for? You read the book. In the book, what's happening? Your imagination. What does Gandalf look in your imagination? You want some producer to tell you what Gandalf looks like? I want some producer to tell me what Gandalf looks like. What does Frodo look like? I don't know. Well, in your head, if you ever read Lord of the Rings, Lord of the Rings, whenever I had the flu, I used to read Lord of the Rings. When you're just like, you can't move. And the last 2 days, the first day you can't even read. The second and third day you still have to stay in bed, but okay, I would read. A cold, you can move around. A flu, stay there for a couple of days. Okay. So I used to read Lord of the Rings every time I had a flu. I didn't have the head to sit and learn anything real. But okay. Frodo, what does he look like? In my head, this is what he looks like. Reading is so interesting because you produce this whole world in your imagination. It's so good for you. Okay, read books. You don't read. Tell your kids to read books. Don't stick them in front of a screen where someone else tells them what reality looks like. Let them imagine what reality looks like. So we like learning. So the beer of Torah is sort of peaceful, calm. put me in front of a book. I find that interesting. What's the book talking about? Shor Shenagachas Apara. Oh, that's interesting. What are the halachas? Oh, he's a tam? Pays half damage. Oh, only megufa. What does megufa mean? What does it mean, half damage in megufa? What does that mean? Can you explain that to me? It's interesting. I'm interested. Okay. Shlomo Melech, everybody came to him. He didn't go anywhere. To Kamechein hu, Achiluk shebein abiter de tefillah abiter de Torah. Shebeiter de tefillah hu ba'ofen. 4 lines up. We're going to finish the paragraph quickly. Shenefesh elokis mislaveshes benefesh abamis is clothed in the nefesh abamis, meaning it encounters it and confronts it directly. Ukiyadua shebechdei she's beininus de tefillah. In order for the contemplation and meditation of tefillah, in order for that to bring tifol, that it should cause birur nefesh abamis, it should cause a rectification of nefesh abamis, elevate the nefesh abamis, get the nefesh abamis to a point where it actually wants to talk about the Eibishter, which is an incredible birur. Sricha liya is therefore, it must be, is beinunus. The contemplation that we do has to be binyanim ke'elu, in those things like, things that are like what? Uba'ofen, and in a way, shekam nefesh abamis yichelu lasig, that the nefesh abamis can understand it. Right? When we learn Chassidus in such a way, we learn lofty, godly concepts, but we learn them in such a way that human intellect can understand the concept. Because if I learn it in such a way that human intellect can't understand it, and I'm just reading holy words, like if I were to come here and start, just quoting Zohar, just read Zohar for 45 minutes every morning, someone will just read it out loud. There's people who understand it, right? But I don't understand it. Okay, does it have some peripheral effect on me? Yes. What does it not affect? My conscious reality. Why not? Because I don't understand what I was saying. Now, that doesn't mean no one understands, sir. I'm just saying, relative to this, what do the Rebbeim always do when they teach us Chassidus? They take unbelievably lofty godly concepts, and they bring them down to a level that human intellect can understand. So you and I learn them, and it makes an impression on my conscious reality. My Nefesh Bahamis goes, wow, what an idea. That's amazing. Oh. My Nefesh Bahamis could say that about godliness. He could say that about shtus also, but he can say it about godliness. So teach him godliness, and he'll go, wow, that's amazing. And he's naturally inclined to want to do that because he also has an Nefesh Elokis. Mashein ken a birur de Torah, the birur of Torah. What do? Just sit and learn Torah. And what happens? I don't have to confront my nefesh abamis. I don't have to confront the cow that I'm talking about. I don't have to confront the ganef that I'm talking about, or the gazlan that I'm talking about. I don't have to find myself in court. I don't have to deal with 3 judges. I don't have to deal with an adversary in court. Just learn it. And then you're elevating all of those aspects of everyday life. Olam hazeh. By virtue of the fact that you learn in Torah that this thing is permitted and this thing is forbidden, they are elevated mamela, consequently, without any particular action. Tefillah, direct confrontation with the nefesh abamis. Davening, learning, no. That doesn't mean it's not an nefesh abamis there. But it's, we all experience it. It's such a battle. Open up a Gemara and it's just like lose sight of where I am after 3 words. That doesn't mean I understand it all. There's things that are hard to understand. There's even aspects of Torah which is really astounding. Not Torah Shabbal Peh, not Gemara. But if you sit and learn psukim and you don't understand them, you bring about a birur just by virtue of you've been mekayim in the midst of Talmud Torah just by saying the words. Because they're elevating whatever reality they're talking about, even if you don't understand it. That's Torah Shabbal Torah Shabbal Peh, if you don't understand it, you haven't been mekayim in the midst. You have to have some understanding. Because Torah Shabbal Peh is all about understanding. Have an amazing Shabbos. Happy birthday, Eli Nimitz. Our 3-year-old grandchild who put on. We already have a picture in the family group of him wearing his yarmulke and his, holding his tzitzis, kissing his tzitzis. Still has long hair, right? But today he gets his haircut. He's very excited. He gets a yarmulke. You put a yarmulke on as early as the kid will keep it on. But he's not the type of kid. He's not going to keep it on after 3 either. He's going to always be like, well, Ellie, where's your yarmulke? Oh. Right? He's just one of those, like a bulldozer. But tzitzis, it's hard to take off. So he'll have his tzitzis, have his yarmulke, have his payas. It's very exciting. Little Ellie. They turn into little boys in like 20 minutes. It's amazing. Yeah, it is a lot of nachas. Kids are really... grandchildren are pretty cool.
Alright. So what about the Poda?
What about?
With the challenges
Of...
in the science.
Oh, so Gashmias in general, which is the...
Because I'm learning another timer and they're saying...
Wait, you don't want this? Hello?
Gabi!
Gabi? Well, I guess that means he's...
There I'm reading this now, the end of the exile,